All right, well, while that's going, welcome everybody. Let's see, let me share my screen. All right, well, while that's going, welcome everybody. All right, let's see. So we are in the last stretch. We are on week 13, the second day, April 14th. And let's see, we didn't meet on Monday since it was Care Day, but we are going to meet next Monday, the 19th. That it used to be, this was supposed to be Patriots Day, no class, but instead we switched basically the day off from next Monday to the Monday that just passed. So yeah, so we are meeting for lecture on Monday the 19th. So my plan was for us to discuss the project today and also next Monday, and give you a chance to, if you have any questions, any concerns, you need any clarifications. I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to discuss those as a group. If you have a particular topic that might be useful for everyone, definitely you can suggest it here, or perhaps send me a private message, and then we can consider it to discuss it here. If you have something that you think might be useful for everyone, for the class, then certainly we can discuss it here. If you have something more specific, maybe a bug or something, setting up some kind of environment, I'd rather that we cover that in a one-on-one basis, or on the office hours as well. So you can reach out to me and we can discuss it later. But if you have something that can be useful for everyone, definitely please speak up, and we can probably be useful for everyone. So yeah, so demo projects are going on. There are 2 demo projects. The first one was a more on, let's see where everybody is, and identify any misunderstandings on the requirements, any questions that you might have, and the TAs were going to clarify them for you. Also, and it was a time also to make some commitment on identifying what was missing and deciding that, hey, I'll try to have this by next week or the next demo. And the TAs might have suggested something and a plan of attack, and that's where the demo 2 is going to measure what you might have said you were going to do compared to what you actually did. And the idea is just to demonstrate that you're making progress, right? That you're making some progress, and then you're not leaving this to the very last minute. It says here Wednesday, April 21st is the due date. So meaning everything has to be done by the due date, although there's no way that we're going to grade everybody on Wednesday the 21st. That's where we're going to start grading, and meaning after April 21st you can expect to be graded at any moment. But we have more than a week to grade. So the way we're going to run that is that we're going to have another demo, a very last demo, where again, just like the demo 1, demo 2, you're going to meet again with the TAs, and that's going to be your final presentation. And in your final presentation, you're going to demonstrate that you have achieved all the requirements. Or if you had discussed with me or the TA some negotiation that instead of this feature, some other feature, or if you had some special case, edge case, then and we had some approval from me or the TA, then that's the day where we're going to ask you, you demonstrate to me that you have a user to domain relationship. Demonstrate to me that you can log in and you can register and you have a profile and you can search and you can. So all the features that are listed in the requirements, the TAs are going to have a checklist, right? And they're going to ask you, demonstrate for me that you did this and that and the other. And it's just going to go down the list, check, 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 check. And so this might take, maybe half an hour. I can't see this being more than an hour per team. And so now you should all go to that meeting, and anyone should be able to demonstrate the project. You can decide that perhaps member one demonstrates one part of the project, and team member number two demonstrates some other part of the project. You can decide how to go, but everybody should participate. The TAs could alter the order, right? They could ask any one of you to explain any part of the project, and you should all be cognizant, right, of the overall architecture, overall design, overall implementation. So you should not have as an excuse saying that, oh, I didn't do that part, so I don't really know. Right? Everybody should know at least to some extent what everybody else did, and at least architecturally, functionally, maybe not 100% implementation, but you should have a good grasp of the application in general. What else? Yeah, so that's going to be that starting Wednesday the 21st. So that's starting Wednesday the 21st, and that could take a whole week, right? A meeting with all the teams, and so it is okay for you to do some last-minute changes or fixes or bug fixes during that week. That's okay, but you should feel that at any moment you can be graded. Now, we're going to be scheduling folks randomly that week, depending on who's available when, and then yeah, you'll go through the demonstration. Okay. Yeah. So that's the 21st. Also that day, that Wednesday, so a week from today, we're going to have a review for the final exam, which is going to be available the Monday, the 26th. Right. So we'll review on the 21st. We'll go over past exams and other questions from from previous exams, and you should expect questions like those. I will make available some sample questions for you to review, and we'll go over them together on Wednesday, the 21st. So anyway, so today and Monday, my plan was to discuss the project. Again, if you have any questions, anything that you think might be useful to discuss here together in class. I do have a few ideas on what you might need. For instance, in previous semesters and in the section that I just taught earlier today, there was a discussion on user management, right? On creating users and registering and logging in and a profile page, and if you have different roles, how do you handle different roles, and how do you display this and that depending on the role? How do you stop somebody from doing something they're not supposed to based on their role? So anyway, so that was a good discussion. Perhaps that might be useful here. But I first wanted to give you a chance, to suggest topics or something that you might want to discuss about the project. And if not, I already have something in mind.
Professor, yeah, I kind of was curious about something. I mean, it is related to the project, particularly like in the back end. Like I've done like some basic backends like in C# and things like that. And like most of the operations I did were always like asynchronous. Like similar to how we've been doing things with the front end. So I'm just like curious, like how does that work? Like at least at a high level, like in Java and Node, like in terms of like asynchronous tasks and like I guess I don't know why has that not been covered, or I'm
What
just
do you
kind of
mean?
curious about it.
What do you mean by asynchronous tasks?
Like when you're interacting with the database and like when you're even like, I don't know, getting any kind of operation from the REST controller or something like that. Like do you do things asynchronously or do they happen synchronously, like on the back end? I just don't like totally understand, I guess.
So I mean, we have been doing all things asynchronously when we communicate from the client to the server. All that communication has always been asynchronous, right, from day one. The communication between the server and the database, the when we worked with Java, that communication was synchronous. That the JPA, when you make a call from Java onto MySQL, that communication is synchronous. With the communication between Node.js and Mongo, I'm not sure if we went over that. We took a look at Mongoose, and Mongoose, the communication is asynchronous, and certainly we can go over that. But definitely it is asynchronous, and we can certainly cover that. That'd be part of my that is part of my plan for today. And so if
I want to draw you two off course. I was just kind of like, picking your brain on it, like kind of how that works. I was curious, like
no,
for example,
absolutely.
now I'm curious, like why is Mongoose asynchronous, the other one's not,
Yeah, no, each vendor is it's free to decide on how to implement it. JPA by default out of the box is synchronous. So when you make the call to the database and wait for the rows to load, that is synchronous. It obviously in the back end it handles these in behind the scenes SQL JDBC is asynchronous, but it hides all that from you, right? For instance, when you make a call and retrieve rows from a database, it looks as if you are consuming them row by row, synchronously, right? One row at a time. You're iterating, and that's a synchronous operation. But behind the scenes, all that is happening asynchronously. So what it does is that it loads asynchronously 10 rows, and as you are consuming them sequentially, and you're reaching the bottom of the bucket, right? It will asynchronous go fetch 10 rows more, and then append them at the end, so that from your point of view, it's synchronous. And but you don't know that behind the scenes, all these things are happening asynchronously, where it's fetching all these things remotely and filling up this bucket as you progress sequentially through the list. So yeah, so behind the scenes, JPA is asynchronous, but it hides all that complexity from you, giving you an iterator, right? Dot next, dot next, dot next. Now, where if you go to Mongoose, which we'll cover today, all that is completely asynchronous, and it does not hide it from you. You are working raw with the communication with the database, and that communication, you're responsible for consuming that in an asynchronous manner, meaning you have to register you for a callback. When it comes back, you get interrupted, and then you have to consume the buffer yourself. And certainly that was part of my plan today, is part of discussing user management, creating users, and communicating with the database. If that's what is interesting to everybody. I'm sorry.
That was really helpful. Yeah, thank you. That gave me a lot of insight. I was kind of curious how that worked. For whatever reason, it just seems like when I try to like look up things about specifically like JPA and Spring, like it just seems like the documentation on everything we're using is kind of like disorganized. I don't know if like you've experienced that. I don't know like if there's a good like central repository to find things. I find myself getting directed to like a lot of like third-party kind of tutorial websites and things like that, which has been fine. Like I've been learning things fine. I just like, like when I use like other Java, like in OOD, like when I was using like Java util or something like that, like it's so well documented, it's like so rich.
Yeah.
I've just been kind of surprised like why there hasn't been like a better kind of central hub for the Spring and JPA stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, there are some wiki pages that are specifically for JPA. I forget what it's called. There's one that's very well documented. I think it's called Wiki JPA or something that documents. Oh, this is it. Like this is a very well documented with tons of examples on coding, on if you do it this way, if you do it that other way. And so this is a really good starting point. I mean, this is for JPA in general. But
Like more like API docs kind of thing,
yeah.
like I don't know, like sometimes I find them,
Well,
like
API
I'll
docs,
land on like a Stack Overflow or something, direct me to API docs. Find these like
yeah, this is the API documentation for
persistence.
JPA.
Okay.
This is the so this is where it starts.
Okay, yeah,
point.
and things just
So
get
you
like
need to
so
start by the
nested
package.
down.
Like if you're looking for Java util, right, you would go to the java.util
Yeah,
documentation,
okay.
right? But if you go, so you need to know the package, and the package for entity and table and anything that has to do with data access is Java X persistence, and so this would be a good entry point.
Okay.
So we'll put that in the chat.
Yeah, that is helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. So somebody's asking, what is the best way to proxy a client request via the backend to a third-party API? So usually what you would do is that in your controller, you would provide an API that is available to your client, right, to your React client, and then your controller can then open up another HTTP request that goes out to somewhere else, right, to a third-party API. This is useful when the third-party API that you want to access is doesn't support CORS, right? And so it doesn't like browsers connecting to their APIs. Instead, they would prefer some desktop or some server, connecting to their API. So oftentimes you can't go directly from the browser directly to the third-party API. So you have to instead use a technique called Proxy Server. And basically what that means is that your controller would be the proxy server, right? It would be either deployed locally or on Heroku. And so your React would be allowed to communicate with your server because you have successfully configured your course, right? And perhaps you have given your access control origin. You've put in here the address of where your React or your jQuery or your Angular client lives. So you have total accessibility to your server. And so the technique is to go from your client to your server through a controller that you define, and you give it whatever API you want. And then from there, your code, your controller would make another fetch call, right? That would go and retrieve the data, and whatever that comes back, you would parse it here on the server, and then you would return that back to the client. Okay, and it's proxying in the sense that the server is not doing any processing, right? It's echoing whatever the remote API comes back, right? It sends it right back to the client. So yeah, you might need to do that if if whatever API you're using does not support CORS, right, then that means that your browser is not going to be able to directly communicate with your third-party API. I would suggest that when you search for an API, that part of your search is that your filter, one of your criteria when you're searching it, is that it supports CORS. Right, that simplifies the architecture tremendously, so that you can directly go from the browser, from React.js, go directly to the third-party API, and only go out to your own API when you need to store a side effect or related data, so that if you want to remember something, you have to store it in your own database. All right, anything else?
I was curious about like this is kind of going towards where you were planning, but I was curious about like when you do a user sign up, like originally I was thinking like after the user gets created, I would do like something server side to like redirect the request to like the login / authentication kind of endpoint. I didn't know if that was like best practice or like does it, because like it kind of seemed like redundant to like have the user like go to the login page after going to the sign in page.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I was just curious kind of how you typically handle that.
Right. So so it depends where is that you want to do the navigation. So we have mostly done navigation on the client side. We'll be using routing. We'll be using exclusively routing on the client side, no routing on the server side. The routing that we've done on the server side has been mostly for data access, through controllers and things like that. But no presentation has ever come from our servers. That is certainly an option, where the where most of the navigation is being handled by the client, but there might be opportunities where the server might also is based on a query, some logic, you might redirect them to a specific HTML page or whatnot. Yeah, we haven't done that. We mostly have done all the logic for navigation on the client, and for registration that would be the case as well. You would send a request to register, and depending on the registration successful or not, right? If it's unsuccessful, right, because the username is already taken or whatever, you would send back from the server some token saying, hey, this user already exists. You should, the registration was unsuccessful. And the client would use that to decide to not navigate, to stay in the registration page. As opposed to if the registration was successful on the server, then the server would go on and create the user and come back with an actual user to the client. And the client would see this as a successful registration, and then would decide to navigate to maybe the profile, right? Because maybe part of the registration was to log you in, right? To insert you in a database, and also add you to a session, so that now the client would receive a cookie, would know that have been logged in, and they could safely navigate to the profile page because now the server knows who they are. So that absolutely was part of my plans on discussing that today and demoing how you would go about doing that. And certainly I'd love to discuss that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because that's kind of like what we're doing right now. Like we do a sign up and then the server will come back and say, great, yep, you signed up. And we go, okay, let's take that same email and password that we just sent to the sign up endpoint, and let's now send it to the login endpoint, and
Yep, exactly.
just kind of chain the two together. So I was just curious if that was like normal or not.
Yeah, we absolutely can demo that.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Let's take a look at that. Before that, let's see. There's a question, Ruben. Third-party API on that. Should we put the code in the controller or the service? Yeah, for a proxy, there's really no service, and there's no business logic. So it would basically only be a controller, and it would only be responsible for receiving the request from the client, sending it over to a third-party API. When it comes back, you echo it back to the client. So there's no service. Services will only be for when you want to establish some kind of logic and some business logic, but there is none right here. You're only, like the name says, proxy, right? You're just echoing. It's a stop and go, right? You don't have any processing done on the server. So yeah, it would only be in the controller. Okay, let's see. All right, so let's take a look at this. Let's first work on maybe on registering. Let's see. So this is the React side, and so this is the React. Oh, this is the prototype. I guess it could be the prototype. Okay, yeah, let's do it on the prototype. Let me see what we have here so far. Let's do npm. Here's npm, and we're gonna run this to start. Let's see where we were with this. Okay, so this was, I believe, the movie prototype, right? So let's add a couple more things here, a couple more navigations, maybe for login, registration, profile, things like that. Okay, so let's take a look at the navigation that we have so far. Let's create a couple components for user management. So we'll put everything that has to do with users under a users directory. So for instance, we might have a registration page. Let's start with registration, right? And let's see. Actually, we might build the components just to check to see if the navigation works, if what we're looking for. So for instance, we might have here register. And so this would be import React from React. And then this would be const register. And we would return div, and this is h1 register. And we will go to export defaults and then register. Oh, there we go. And let's maybe create a couple of input fields here. And make them form control. Maybe a placeholder, just to give a hint that this is the username. And maybe this is a password. And this is maybe validate password. Okay. And maybe a button to register. Last name, this is a button, primary. Okay. All right, let's see. Let's go into app.js and let's create a route for these. Might as well just build all the other ones. How about login? Login looks very much like register, right? But the only difference is that is login, right? And the button is login. It has username, password, no validate. Right? Maybe that's the only difference. And maybe we have a profile page. So profile, and the profile and maybe the profile has like a logout, Okay, and we'll leave the username so that maybe we can display the username, maybe, or something like that. Well, actually, no. We'll display the username later on. Okay, so we can navigate by adding some navigation here and creating some routes, maybe over here, saying that if the route is let's see, login, then we are going to display the login component. And we can just copy this 3 times. This would be if it's register, then this is register. If this is profile, then this is profile, right? And maybe we could put some links, maybe in the home screen. Okay, so just a couple of links. Maybe this one is for register, login, and profile. This is register, login, profile. Okay. All right, so let's see, what do we got? Maybe put a break between all of them. All right, so if we can register, I could go to register, login, or profile. Okay, all right. So let's focus on register. So how would this work? The register would, when you click on the button register, it you would have to check to see if the username is taken. If it is, then we don't advance. If it's not taken, then we create the user in the database, and then we do advance to the profile, right? And that would happen in a function called register. And register, we would click, we'd say on click register, right? And here we would go out to the server, depending on what the server comes back, we decide to navigate to the profile or stay here. Okay. So how do we navigate to the profile? We can use register. We can use history, right? From history from React Router DOM, right? So we could programmatically decide if everything is okay. We can say history, const history, use history, and then we can say history, then push. We're going to go to the profile, right? Something like that. So here, if we click on register, it navigates to the profile, right? And logout would probably behave something like that, right? We would have on the profile, right? We would use history just like we did in register, so that if we log out, so if we, let me copy this. So if we log out, then we navigate, say, I don't know, to the home screen maybe. What's the navigation to home? Oh, the root. We go back to the root, right? And so on click, on log out, we navigate to home. Say so on click, we log out. Obviously, this would go out to the server. It will tell the server, I want to log out. And the server, when it comes back, saying, yep, you're logged out, you're good, right? We navigate to the home screen. So for instance, if I click on logout, it goes back to the home screen. So register. So that's so now we have the navigation between register, go log out, right, to profile, and then we can come back here. Same thing with login. Login would behave similar to register, right? Right. We would have a history, history here, but when we log in, we also go to the profile, right? If it's successful. If it's not successful, we stay here in the login page, and maybe we give them an error message or something. But if it's successful, we navigate to the profile page, already being logged in. Okay, so so we would say on click. You can't type. On click, we say login. Right, so we click on login, we go to the profile, log out, brings us here, we can register, right? Probably you also want a link between register and login, perhaps, right? So if you are in login, maybe you also want a hyperlink down here that goes to also register. So that, if you say, oh, I clicked on login, but I really meant register. Register, right? Where if you go to login, notice we can either log in or navigate to register. Notice that here we are programmatically navigating to profile using history, but to register, we're not doing it programmatically. We're just navigating there, right? And the reason the reason we decided to implement it differently is that if we click on the button, we really want to execute some logic, right? We want to communicate with the server. The server is going to come back to us and it's going to let us know whether we should or shouldn't. Whereas register, right, there is no logic, right? I just want to navigate there. Okay, I just want to click on register and it just takes me to register. So it's a blind navigation. Same thing if you are in register, maybe you meant to click on login. Okay, so here I can click on, I can toggle between the two, right? Make sense? So yeah, let's work on register. So what would register do? So if I click on register, usually what I like to be able to do is communicate with the server that I want to register, right? And typically that would be done through a service, right? So you would have a user service, user service, that would have all the communication with the server, right? We would have const register that would be posting to the server to some URL, something like const user API. It's maybe something like HTTP :// localhost. I'm not going to use 3000 because my React application is running on 3000. So I'm going to have my server run at 4000. So API and then maybe users, okay? Something like that. And so register would be something like, I'm going to return fetch, and it would be the user API followed by register. Okay, and now we want to post, right? We don't want to do a get. By default, this is get, right? We want to use a post because we're going to be sending username and password. There's a question in the chat that says, what's the point to use history here other than link? I believe I answered that, right? Was that clear, Yuyan? Are you good?
Yes, because I asked the question before you talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to use posts. And the reason is that we're going to be sending username and password information, so credentials across the network. And usually we want to encrypt that. We wanted to secure that information. We don't want folks that might be listening in between our connection, be able to see that password in the clear, right? So to accomplish that, typically we would use HTTPS. HTTPS will encrypt end-to-end, but my server doesn't support HTTPS locally on my machine, right? So I'm not going to use HTTPS, but still, I am going to use POST. I'm still going to use POST. And I'm going to include the username and password, right, in the body, right? Presumably, you will provide that here, credentials, which will include, username and password, email and password, or whatever, right? And we're going to pass them in as objects. So we're going to put in the body the credentials. So JSON stringify credentials, which, for us is just username and password. Okay, so and headers. This would be contents type, and this would be application/JSON. Okay. All right, excellent. Also here we would have login, right? We would have, well, we can do that later, and we would have logout would be here too, right? Everything that has to do with user management would live here. And then we export this, export default, and put that all here. So register, login, and logout. Okay. All right. So now we can go back to our register here and import that. So import user service from services user service. Okay. So here we could do user service register, and we would pass here what? The username and the password, right? So so how could we, so register, we would pass in username and password. So we need that, we need to read that from the username and password down here in the input field. So let's do that. Let's do that, a use state where we have a credentials, set credentials, and that's equal to use state, and I'll have username empty, and then password, something like that, right? And how do we populate that? We do that here, right, in these input fields, right? We say on change, we have the event is equal to set credentials. So we're gonna copy the old credentials, and we're just gonna set the username equal to the e.target.value, right? And then we're going to do the same thing for password. And so this is password. The third, I'm going to leave this last one for you, right? And right, you want to validate that the two passwords are the same, blah, 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 all that, right? Let's see if this works. Okay, so I can type username and password. Very good. I can't type. Oh, I can. Why? Because I didn't bind it to anything. Actually, we have to bind it, right? This is equal. This is bound to value is equal to credentials dot username, right? And this is bound to the password. Okay. And I can type. Okay. All right. Yeah. So this is, I'm going to send the credentials here. Credentials. All right. Excellent. So user service register. There's register, and that's the implementation. We're going to post. Now, obviously, we don't have a server running, right? So this is going to fail. But at least we can check to see if this whole thing works. If at least on the client side, if it looks like it's going to work, let's bring in the network, see what happens here. If we type, Alice, Wonderland, right, and we click on register, Okay, there it is. So we did send the register to the server. Looks like we did send it, and we did send the username and password. So we did send the credentials to the server, but there was no server to listen to us, right? So let's head over to the server and let's implement that piece. Okay, so this is the React side. Let's head over to the server. So on the server, let's see what we got on the server. So on the server, right, we had created this server. We had started a connection with Mongoose to the database, right? We had played around with some demos, some quizzes, some questions, and we had created the models for the questions and the quizzes, and I believe this is what we were storing in our database, right? This is some controllers. All right, so let's continue on this, right? Let's continue on this. Let's see some of the data that we have. Let's see. So I believe in O2, in the node server, web dev, server node, I believe this is where the database is running. So let's kick off the server here. So Mongo db path, and this is data. And then kick off a client in the same directory. It doesn't have to be in the same directory, but I like to keep everything in the same place. Wait, where are we? O3, no, not O3, sorry. O2. Oh wait, here I'm O2, right? Yes, O2. Okay, so yeah, so let's go into web dev server node, and let's start Mongo from here. Okay, let's see what we got here. So we go, so show DBs. Then we're looking, okay, so there's whiteboard 2. Let's copy, so let's use whiteboard 2. And let's show collections. And okay, it looks like we had some users, right? So db.users.find.pretty. Right? And it looks like we got 1, 2, 3, like 4 users. Okay, let's not count on these because these might be all screwed up, right? But we'll create some users when we register. All right, so we got the database though, right? Let's create a model for the users. So let's create a directory for the users so that we can talk to a database about users. So we'll say users. Let's create the schema. So this is users dash schema with double A. Okay, and this will be const mongoose. We're going to require mongoose, and oops, and then we can create the user schema using mongoose.schema. And here we'll have the first name, string, right? Last name, string. We'll have username and password. And we'll have also maybe role. So role is also a string, right? You could be an admin role, faculty, student, whatever, right? So I'm going to say that, yes, this is a string, but it's not any string. It's a string that can only be one of these, right? It could be only admin, it could be faculty, or it could be student. Okay? And we're going to store all that information in the following collection. Okay? All right, excellent. So we're done here. user schema. Let's head over and implement the model now. And so JavaScript, so this is it would be the user's model. And in the model, we're going to need Mongoose. All right, we're going to need the schema. So it's in the same directory. And now we can create the user's model. And so the user's model is going to use Mongoose model. And we need to give it a unique identifier, so user model. And then we need to give it the schema. All right, we got the model. We now can export this, so we can use it elsewhere. Use the model. Okay. All right. So we could absolutely write the controller right away or the service right away, right? But I had suggested that that we write a DAO, right? A data access object in between the service and the data, right? And the reason is that the services that we've been writing, if you realize, the services are written in terms of the question model, right? And the question model is using all these generic low-level functions, right? That are very, very Mongoose. They're very Mongo very Mongo specific, right? Find by ID, blah, 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 all those. And those are very low level. So services should be a little bit higher level, right? That they use the data layer, right? But not so close to the data layer that they even know that they're using Mongo, right? Or they're using MySQL, or they're using any specific vendor. So a good practice is to hide all those details inside of a data access object, right? So for instance, so we would implement all the communication to the database inside of these data access objects, right? So for instance, we would create here, user's DAO, which would have things such as find user by username, right? Because if we're going to register somebody, we need to be able to find if that username is taken, right? So we need to pass it a username, right? And find out if that user exists, okay? We also need to be able to create the user, right? If the user does not exist, then yes, we want to create the user. So we're going to create user, right? All this in terms of the model, right? The cons users model, which lives down in models, users, oops, and then user model. Okay, so the way we write find user by username from the user model is using, we're going to return users model dot find, where the username colon username, right? That's what we're going to return. Now this can be rewritten because of ES6, right? We can just when the key and the value are the same, then we can just use the key. For creating the user, that's easy, right? We use the user's model dot create and user. So this is translating from a high-level API into a low-level API, right? This is very specific to our domain, whereas this is very generic, right? It could find anything. Same thing. This is very generic create, whereas this is very specific to our domain, our implementation. Right, so that's all the DAO does, right? It hides the low-level stuff. We could replace this with MySQL, Postgre, file system. Doesn't matter. As long as we keep the API to the rest of the world, everybody else is safe from any underlying implementations with the data layer. Okay. Anyway, so we're going to export this. So module.exports, and we'll put here find user by username, and then we'll also need export is equal, and then create user. All right, excellent. So we got the DAO. We can then the controller. Let's create the controller. So the controller will be something like, this is a user's controller. Controller. This is the one who's going to receive the post, right? The post that we are generating here. This post, right? We're posting to API users register, right? So here we want to have something like app dot. I'm going to listen to an incoming post, and we're going to listen to API/users. I think, right? Users register. So register. Right, and we're going to call a function called register, which doesn't exist yet. Okay, so the function register is going to listen for those incoming request response. Right, it's going to now participate in that request response, and can use the DAO, right, to accomplish this. Right, it would have things such as, first check to see if the user exists. So first of all, we want to extract the user from the body that it's coming, right? So const the credentials from the body, which that's where we put it in the body, right? So we're going to extract it from the body, and there's a username in there. We're going to use the username to find out if the user already exists. So we'll do something like we'll need to bring in the DAO, right? So const user DAO. We need to require that and go to DAOs and then user DAO. So let's find out if the user is already taken. So we can say, user DAO dot find user by username, pass in the credentials dot username, right? And so that's going to come back to us with the actual user, right? And here's where we want to decide what to do. If the user is already taken, that username is already taken, then we can't register. We need to respond with this to the client with something that the client can say, oh, we can't use that username. All right, there's a quick question on the chat. Does the create function return the actual object? Yes. Yeah. In the DAO, this create, well, they all return asynchronous, right? They all return a promise, right? That needs to be consumed, right? So the communication here between the server and Mongo is asynchronous. So this return is really not returning the user; it's returning a promise, which we are using here. Well, we haven't used it yet. This find also returns a promise, right? Which we are using here to synchronize using .then, which is a callback, which are going to be called when the actual user is found or not, right? So if the user exists, right? If there is an actual user, we can't use that that credential. We can't create the user, right? So instead, we're going to respond. We're going to send back some token or something that we know that this is no good, right? And it could be anything, right? As long as the client knows what to check for, right? I'm just sending back a 0, not the number 0. Careful, right? Not the number 0, because then that's considered an HTTP code, right? Instead, this is a string 0. All right. So otherwise, right? If indeed the actual user does not exist, then we should be able to create it. We can use now the user DAO to create the user, right, using the credentials. Okay. Oops, sorry. And that's going to come back also with another with the new user, right? New user. And we should now be able to send back and respond with the new user that was created. we're going to send back the new user. Okay. All right, that makes sense. All right. Let's see. Let's wrap this up. Notice that we don't have app here. We don't have app. So somehow we need to pass in. What app is this? This is the app that we instantiated here with Express, right? Express has all those functions, you know, .get, .post, whatever, all that stuff, right? So we need to pass it in here, and the way we're going to pass it is we're going to wrap this whole thing in a function that you can pass it the app, right? So we're going to do module.exports app, right? And then have a function here that is going to have, oops, we're going to have all this in there. There we go. Okay. All right. All right. Yeah. So how does it pass it? It's from the server's point of view. The server needs to pass the app, just like we did with our own controller, right? We're going to require, and the controller here is the user controller, and we're going to pass the app. Okay. Okay. So we should be good to test this. Let's see. Let's start the server. Actually, I'm going to start the server in debug mode because, right, we might get some errors. I'm sure we're going to get errors. Let's see. And one of the first places that I want to check to see in this register in our controller is these credentials. Are we getting the credentials, right? So let's put a breakpoint right there. And let's, and this is, I think, register is going. Let's see. Let's clear this out, and let's try Dan. Register. Okay, so we're in here. Right? We are at the server. The server. Let's see the credentials. Notice that the credential says undefined. Undefined. So it looks like that didn't work. Right. So it wasn't able. Well, at least we're in the register on the server. Right. The client was able to send something, and boom, we are on the server listening for this. Right. But the credentials didn't work. So it looks like the body did not work, and that's to be expected, right? Out of the box, Express doesn't know how to parse JSON from the body, right? So we need to use a library. I believe it's already installed. Yeah, there it is, body parser. Yeah, body parser is a library that can parse JSON from the body. Let's look it up. I forget how to use it. So this is npm body parser. Okay, so let's see. Let's look at the cheat sheet. So we install body parser. We don't need to. I think we already have it. We need to require it. So let's bring that in our server. Let's require const body parser. And then we need to configure it so that to tell it what is that we want to parse from body. And okay, here it is. All right, we want to parse JSON. So these 2 lines should be enough. There we go. Okay, so this is the magic that knows how to parse JSON from the body. All right, so let's try that again. Let's run this server again in debug mode. And let's hit it with the same client, the same request, register. So Dan and Dan. Register, okay. Let's see, hover over credentials. There we have it. We have the username and we have the password. Okay, that looks good. Let's put a breakpoint here as well. Let's continue. Okay, let's hover over actual user. Okay, so it looks like the array is 0. And let's see. Let's continue. Let's hop over. Okay, it's going to come back with 0. It's going to come back with 0. That's good. The user doesn't exist. Actually, no. It thinks that the user exists because this is array 0. Okay, so we should check for the length to be 0, right? If the length is 0, then the user doesn't exist. And so right, if the actual user length is greater than 0, that means that there is a user. Okay, so let's stop this. This is no good. Let's keep. So we're going to say if actual user dot length, right? Length is greater than 0, then that means that there is a user and we don't like it. Okay, so let's try it again. Let's try the server again. We can take out this breakpoint. We know we were getting there correctly. Let's try it again. Register Dan and Dan 1, 2, 3. Register. Okay, so actual user is 0. Let's skip over this. Okay, so now notice that it's going to create the user. It's going to create the user, hopefully. Let's make sure that it's not already there. Let's retrieve all the users. We got Tim, Bob, and Alice. Okay, so let's put a breakpoint right here before it goes back to the client. Let's see, new user. Looks like it created the user and it's going to send it back. So on the client, we can also put a breakpoint. Let's head over to the client. Oh, it already navigated. It already navigated away from the register. Okay, that's fine. Let's continue. And here, notice, let's see what came back from the client, from the server, sorry. There's our posts. Look at the preview. Okay, looks like Dan was created. Notice that it has an ID, right? Let's check the database. Looks like it was able to put in there. There's Dan, right, with our username and password. So now this time around, we try to register with the same user. We should get a 0 from the server, right? Let's try that. Let's try to make sure that that part of the logic works.
May I ask, what's the difference between those registers in the console.network in the browser? Are they sequential register object getting back from the server?
Oh, why are there 2?
Yeah, there are so many. I mean,
it's all, well, they're always in pairs. They're always in pairs, right? Well, not always. When you use course, right, they are in pair. And one of them is asking the server, hey, what are my options? And the server is responding, saying that what is allowed is that I'm accepting get, post, put, delete. I'm accepting everything, right? And so the client says, oh, okay, you're accepting post. And then it sends the post. The server might have not allowed post, right? And so this would have failed. It would have said course, blah, blah, blah. You can't communicate. But we do have that configured in server saying that we are allowing all the stuff. Make sense?
So one is from the client to the server, and another is a response.
Both of them are from the server. Both of them are the browser first asking for permission, and the second one is the actual request.
Oh, okay, okay.
Notice that the first one is an options. It's asking for the options.
Yeah.
And sometimes this is referred to as a pre-flight query, meaning before I ask you anything, I'm asking you if I can ask you anything. Right? And the server says, yeah, it's fine. Yeah, no. The server responds, say, yeah, it's okay. All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Good question. Yeah, so the register, we can now make the register a little bit more fancier, right? If we go back to the register component, so this register credentials is coming back with something, right? Then presumably already parsed. Let's see the register. Let's parse what comes back from the server, right? Here's the response from the server. We want to parse it as JSON. Okay. So here, when it gets to this, then presumably this is the user. Presumably this is the user or 0. Or 0. It's either the user, meaning that we were successful. No, wait. 0 means that the user is taken and we cannot create it. But if we get the user, that means that the registration was successful, and then we can continue. Okay, yeah. Right, so here we're going to do a console log user to see what comes back. But I'm pretty sure we could do something like if user is equal to 0, right? We're not going to do anything, right? We can maybe pop up an alert, right? Saying maybe alert username already taken or something, right? Or you can show something on the DOM or something, right? Otherwise, we should be good. We can navigate to the profile. We could, go to the profile. So let's try it out. Register. Okay, let's try the part where we know worked. We know Dan worked. Let's try A, B, C, D, E. So ed. So register, and let's clear this. Register. Okay, notice that it navigated to the profile, presumably because ed was not taken. Ed was created. There's ed. And how about we try now to register with something that we know exists. So Dan, and we register. It didn't work. Something. Let's step through it. Let's source, and let's open up a register. Yeah, that one. No, not that one. The register source. Wait, what? Register.js, that one. Yeah. Let's step through it. Let's see what actually comes back. Let's go back. Register. Try Dan again. User is 0. Oh, maybe the number 0, not the string 0. Okay, maybe that's what it is. Okay, let's try it again. Here, we'll try Dan. Register. And let's remove this breakpoint. Continue. Okay, notice username already taken. See that? Okay, so already, right, if I try to register with Dan, it's just going to keep saying, nope, that's no good. If I type ed, then no, that's no good. But if I try Charlie, then it's okay. It lets me go to profile. Make sense? Everybody good? You're still with me?
Hey, Professor, can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
I was wondering, with stuff like this, when we're really only kind of calling one function from a service or from a database, is it better to just stick with like a use state or like a hook instead of like implementing a reducer and stuff like that?
So if that information only is relevant here in the component, then yes, definitely the hook, and you don't have to bother with the Redux. If it's if it's a application-wide state that everybody needs to know about it, or not just one screen but multiple screens, then definitely you have to go to the reducer. So,
okay, makes sense. Cool.
Like for instance, I might want to store the fact that the currently logged in user is in the reducer, so that when I get to the profile, I can know that so-and-so is logged in, right? But because I put it only in the hook, nobody knows about it, right? But that's okay, right? Because in the profile here, I like to know who is currently logged in. Who is logged in? How would I know that? I would need to go back to the server and ask who is logged in. But how would the server know? How would the server know that the request that came from register and the request coming from profile are in any way related to one another? There's nothing that the server knows that this register came from Alice, but this profile came from Bob, right? So it needs to know somehow that this profile and that register is from Alice. So I want to show you Alice's profile. So for that, we need to maintain session on the client, on the server side, right? So let's do that. So to maintain session on the server, we're going to need express session, right? And we showed some examples of this, I believe, but let's install it. I don't believe we installed it. Let's copy it. So this is going to allow us to multiple users maintain their own session, and so each one will know who's logged in and whatnot, right? So in Node, we're going to install Express session. So while that is going, we can take a look at the cheat sheet. We're going to require it from our server here. Okay, const. And we're going to configure the session. I'm going to copy this. Okay, and the configuration, the only thing I'm going to comment out is this cookie over here. So this cookie secure equal true only works if you're HTTP, if you're using HTTPS, only if you're using HTTPS. I don't have HTTP. I'm not paying for it. I don't have it here on my local machine. I am paying for it on Heroku. And so if you use HTTPS in Heroku and you're paying for your monthly subscription, then it will encrypt everything end to end, including the cookie, right? If you turn on secure true. But I don't have HTTPS, so it would fail for me. And so we're going to use cookies to be able to determine, whose session this is. We're going to be able to store information depending on the user. Okay. So let's do that. So let's go back to the controller. And so what this app use does, right? It adds this session object, to the request, meaning this request has things such as body, has things such as params, query, right? It's got a lot of things in there, but now it's also going to have a brand new thing called session. And that session is a map. It's a map that you can store whatever you want in there, right? For instance, we could store the new user, and so that we can remember that this user just logged in. And this is for us, for this particular person who's logged in, this is the person that we want to keep in the profile, right? So we could say request.session profile. And you could this could be anything, right? It doesn't really matter as long as you remember what you did, right? I'm going to use profile so that I remember that I put it in there, right? And I'm going to put here the new user. Okay, so for me, this profile is going to, if there's somebody in the profile, it means that somebody has gone through the either registration and they have successfully registered, and now I am logging them in. I'm putting them in the profile. So whoever's in the profile for me is the currently logged in user for that session. Okay, and this session will be different from different browsers. So if from one browser I register or I log in, right, and then I go to profile, blah, blah, and whatnot, all that communication is the same session. If I'm using a completely different browser and I log in and blah, 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 it'll be a completely different session, right? So this session is indexed by your cookie, right? So if you have one cookie, you'll get one session. If you have a different cookie, you'll get a different session. And as long as you maintain the cookie, you're always going to have the same session. Okay. Right. So let me show you. So so there it is. So the session. I'm storing this user. And so now I can ask for the profile. I can say, when I'm in the profile, I would like to, in the profile page, I would like to ask who's currently logged in. Well, I just stored it. I just stored in the session the currently logged in person. And I put it where? I put it in the profile. So if I ask for the profile, like API/users, profile, meaning, what is the current profile? I'm going to call the function profile, where I'm going to return to you, right, request response. I will turn to you the current user. Current user is, where did I put it? I put it in the session profile. Now this might be null, right? If I didn't go through the login, or if I haven't gone through a successful registration, this will be null, which is fine, right? If I return a null, then my logic would be, oh, you tried to access the profile page without logging in, right? And then we kick you out, right? So we're going to say response dot send back the current user. Again, this might be null. Okay. All right, so we have that. We have that. We can head back to the client, and so the profile can now ask for the profile, right? We can say on log when it boots up, right? We can use effect. You can use effect so that when we load, right? We can say use effect. All right, what are we going to do? We're going to fetch. We're going to go out to, well, not fetch. We're going to use a service, right? We're going to use a service. So the service, the user service, we're going to create a const profile. And we're going to do a fetch, a post. We're not sending anything. We're not sending any JSON. We're just posting profile. It's a post. Then, and this is going to be presumably, well, first of all, the response, right? Response. Right, so hopefully this will be the user, right? So let's export this. And so here in the profile, I can use the user, you will need the user service. So let's load that too. Let's load the user service. And we're going to do profile. And profile. So hopefully this is the current user, maybe. Right? And we need to store it somewhere. So let's use a state. We'll use state to store it in a local variable. Current user set current user use state, and it's an object. So we're going to say, set current user. Okay. Yeah. So here we can print out what the current user is. I can say JSON.stringify. Let's see what the current user is. Current user. Okay. All right. Let's try it out. Let's see. User service. Did we do something wrong? Profile export. Import. Blah blah blah. May only appear. What is wrong? Did I miss something? Fetch. Oh, we need a close bracket somewhere here. Yeah. Okay, this is almost going to work. And I'll show you why it's not going to work. Notice that it comes back as empty, right? Now, to show you why this is not going to work, I'm going to put a breakpoint on the server. Let's put a breakpoint right here and right there. Okay, so let me show you. Let me restart the server in debug mode, and let's go back and register. So let's register as, I don't know, whoever, QWE. Oops, what happened? Console, did I break something? Post, user's profile, connection refused. What, the server's not running? Why is the server not running? Blah, 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 blah. Node server. Session, yada, 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 yada. Oh, it doesn't like it. What's going on here? No, blah, 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 Januzzi, yada, yada, yada. Module not found. Did I not express session? Did I not install it? Oh, I thought I installed it. Oh, maybe I installed it in the wrong project. Okay, npm install. Let's try it again. Okay, let's try it again. Let's run it. Okay, I think it's running now. Okay, Let's try it. Restart, register. Okay, so we're here. Okay, check this out. So see the session here, the session object, right? If you look at the session object, request.session. Okay, notice the sessions here. See that? Look at that. VUNUG6A something, 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 something. See that? Okay, also notice that the client, notice what the client said in the network. There's our posts. See, there's our posts. Okay, notice the cookie. See the cookie? So this cookie has an SID, an ID, right? You know, some weird name number, but it ends with IFHU. Okay. Well, it's not the same one, right? Right. And so if we continue, remember the ID, right? It starts with VUNU. If we continue, now notice that it's asking for the profile. If we hover over it, notice there's a different session. See that? It's KVA. So it's not the same cookie. And here either, the cookie that was used to register, right, is WS something, 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 some weird number. If you look at the profile, well, we have to continue. We have to say, we have to respond. We have to respond. The cookie is different, right? The cookies are different. The cookies are different, all right? And the reason is that by default, fetch, right? This fetch, by default, it turns off the cookies, right? It does not share cookies. So from the server's point of view, these are all brand new requests, right? It doesn't know that they're the same, they're coming from the same person, right? So as far as it's concerned, you know, this these requests, right? This profile, this register, and this profile are not coming from the same person. So it could not have store different things for two different people, right? So to fix that, we need to go back, and these fetch, we need to turn on credentials. I would say credentials include, right? We turn it on and say credentials include. All right. Okay. So now let's try it. Let's restart the server. Let's start the server and let's kick off again. Let's log out. Let's register. And now let's register with ASD. Register. Oops. Something. Well, is the server not running? It's not running. Is there an error? Okay. Okay, let's try it again. Register. What? What's going on? What's going on? Did I misspell something here? Credentials include. Credentials include. Post. Let me restart the server, the client too. Okay. Let's refresh. And what's going on? Oh, there we go. Okay, register again. DSA, register. Course, what? Oh, yes, wait a minute. Because it's credentials, because I'm passing credentials, notice that it's failing on course. See that? Look at that. Console, where's the console? I'm getting an access denied, right? If you are going to participate in credentials, right, the course configuration has to change. When you are passing, when it realizes that you're passing usernames and passwords and all this, and you want security, then the course can no longer just be open to everybody, right? This access control origin can't just say, oh, I'm accepting communication from anybody. You need to now specify where is the communication coming from, right? So you have to specify the IP address, the port number, where everything's coming. So in this case, it's coming from localhost 3000, right? All right, cool. So let's restart the server.
So in the future, if we deploy our client to the Heroku, we will change this URL to the Heroku address, right?
Exactly. This could be a comma separated. You could put several. So you could put like localhost, comma, Heroku, comma, blah, 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 blah.
Okay. Just comma, right? Not instead of any array representation.
No, comma. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so let's try this again. Let's refresh. Let's try DDD. Register. 4,000 from origin 3,000 has been blocked. Why are you blocking it? Origin, content, access origin 3,000. Headers, what am I missing? Let me see. Slides, I must be missing something there. Course, Express, let's see, server. Do I have course here? Okay, so we have that. Okay, access control Heroku, yeah. I have the headers. Origin, maybe I'm missing that. Oh, allow credentials true, probably. Okay, I might need that. Allow credentials true. Okay, let's see if that's enough. Let's rerun this. And let's go back. Let's refresh. Register. Okay. All right. We made it into the server. The course was needed some massaging. But let's hover over the session. Right. Notice the session now, and it's KR. What is it? KR something. KRWN. Right. Let's continue. Let's hover over the session. See that? It's KRWM. It's the same ID. That means that we're using the same session, right? And notice that if we look in the session, we have the profile object that we put there earlier with username FFFF. See that? Right. So we can continue. And notice that the profile has now access to that user that we logged in. Right. So for instance, if let's take this out. It's like this over here, right? And so that means that the profile could print out welcome, blah, 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 right? And so in the profile, we could say, H3, welcome, current user. If we have a current user and current user dot username. Okay, welcome FFF, right? All right, so that's register. How about logging in? So to log in on the client side, you would do something similar, right? You would say you would use let's see, you would call the register, right? Well, let me see. How do we do the register? We did everything in the user service, right? So in the user service, let's implement login. So for login, so const login. Again, we're going to pass in credentials. right? And we are going to do the fetch. It's almost identical, right? We're going to almost identical. And so this is login though, right? Login. We include the credentials and basic passive username and password, right? And very much like register, right? We're going to ask ourselves, right? We're going to say user service. Let's load the service. Okay. And then I'm going to copy most of this content, which is going to be very, very similar. We're going to say user service login. Login. We're going to need the credentials just like in register. Right, so let's use use state for that. Credentials, blah, blah, login. If we get the user, so now this time around is what? If we get the user, right? That means that the user exists, and we're going to navigate to profile. Otherwise, alert failed login. You know, login failed. Login failed. You know, try again. Okay. But it's getting hot in here. Just a second. Okay. The credentials, we're going to need the same forms here. We need the same forms, which I'm going to copy straight from the register. I'm just going to copy these two forms. Okay. All right, excellent. So on the server, right? So the login is going where? Login, right? It's this post, right? It's going out to the server. The server is implementing it where? In the controller, we're going to have a login. We're going to have register. We're going to have a login. Again, it's going to be very, very similar to the register. So let's look at the register, how we implemented it. We're going to do what this time around? This time around is slightly different, only that we're not looking for user by username. We're looking users by credentials, right? Okay, so it's going to be almost identical to register. It's going to be called login. We get the credentials, find user by credentials, and which will include both the username. We're going to just pass the whole credentials. If we get the user, so this time around is backwards, right? If the user exists, it's good, right? So if the user exists, then we are just going to send back the actual user. We'll send back the actual user. Otherwise, we're going to send back the 0, meaning something went wrong. Okay, so if the actual user exists, it's good. We found the user, it matches, the credential matches. So this one is not implemented, so let's implement that in the DAO. Let's implement find user by credentials. Okay, which is something like very similar to this. But we're saying credentials, which includes username and password, basically, right? And so let's say username is equal to username is equal to credentials.username, and password is equal to credentials.password. Okay. Yeah, excellent. So let's try it out. In the client, when we get 0, if it's 0, meaning we did not find anybody, so login failed. Otherwise, we did find it, and we're gonna go to profile. Oh, one thing, right? On the server, if we did find it, on the server, if we do find it, not only am I going to send the user, I'm going to make this the current user, just like we did with register, right? So in register, if we find the user, same thing in login, right? If we find the user, this actual user, I'm going to put in the profile so that that is going to be the profile, so that when you navigate to the profile, you're going to get that same user. Okay, so let's try it out. Okay, let's try it out. Let me log in as a user that already exists, like Dan. I forget the password for Dan. Dan was Dan123. So Dan123, log in. Didn't quite work. Let's see, what happened to the network? It went to the login. Oh, apparently we probably did not start the server, right? We probably didn't start the server. So it doesn't have any of those things, right? So let's restart the server. Let's go back to the login. Let's try it again. Dan123. All right, looks like it. Uh-oh, we got into an infinite loop. That's probably because of the. Yeah, that's probably because of our use effect. In where? In profile, probably, right? Profile. In profile, we get this, and we're going to put a. There we go. Welcome. Username is Dan. Oh, why didn't it say welcome Dan? Why is it not profile, set current user, current user, current user. Interesting. I have Dan, username, welcome, username. What? Well, I don't really care about the password, right? Well, I don't know why it's not printing my username. The object is clearly there. Oh, it's an array. It's an array. See that? It's an array. So on the server, actually, we should not return an array. In the user DAO, when we do a find user by credential, this should be find one. There we go. That's why. There's always an answer. Okay, let's do that again. Let's log in again, log out, and log in, and this will be Dan123. What? Wait, Dan123. Find one. Find user model, find one. Well, let's put a breakpoint there. Set again. Dan123. Credentials. Oh, credentials. Okay, Dan, username Dan, and password Dan123. Isn't that what it's called? Dan123? Find one. And then in the controller, in the login, come here, and then continue. There's actual user. Oh, it doesn't have a length. Oh, right, because it's not using find. It's using find one, right? Yes. Okay. Right. So let's stop this. So this should be if actual users, then return it like that. All right. So let's restart that. Oh no, square bracket. Let's restart. So we go back and we say Dan 1, 2, 3. Okay, find one. That should work. And actual user, we have it. Perfect. Continue. We would have logged them in. Actual user. Continue. So here, we still don't have. And the profile, if we refresh, current user, Dan 1, 2, 3. Continue. Oh, there we go. Welcome, Dan. Finally. Okay. All right, there you go. So there's a rough implementation of registering, logging in, profile using some best practices and some techniques of maintaining sessions and whatnot. Okay. So I'm going to push this, both of these, the Node.js and the React.js, so for you to take a look at, and feel free to reuse any and all of it or none of it as you see fit. Okay.
One quick question, Professor.
Yes.
Just the network here. I wonder how can we, debug by using the network tool. I know this is a really useful tool, but I don't know. I don't have too much feeling of how to use it. Like, for example, if we get so many packages from here, like there are many profiles. How should I know which is the correct package I should,
Well, no, this is in order, right? So this was one before, and then this one. So every time I've been going back and forth, it makes a new request. I usually clear out so that I can see the ones that are relevant to me.
So, for example,
Sorry?
For example, you make a request right now, and you will receive a bunch of files here. So like this, how should I find out which one is the correct one to focus?
So you'll notice that these requests, some of them are JS, so these are JavaScript files, right? And notice that these are none are yours. Right, you never created these, right? So these are all infrastructure JavaScript files that are compiled JavaScript, right? So you would not care about it. You know that these you're making, right? These queries are yours, right? The profile, right? Notice that this profile is actually the component, the HTML component. If you look at the content, it's HTML. Right, so this is your profile.js file, right? That's generating all this HTML, and this is the query. Notice that it's localhost 4000. You know that this is the one that's going out to the server, right? 4000 API uses profile. So you after using it quite a bit, right? You'll realize which ones are you generating, the ones that you're expecting, right, and the ones you should ignore. Okay. Where you might spend actually more time, more than the network, is probably in the resources. Where you can step through the register, you can step through the code in JavaScript, right? Either in the profile, in the register, and you can search for the JavaScript that you want to step through by saying Command O or Control O in Windows. So through my profile.js, right? You can step through this and put breakpoints, right, and debug it here. And see when you're using the use effect and retrieving the data, and whether you're doing the query, and whether the as you click, whether things are happening. So you can absolutely step through in the client, step through in the server, right, and do a follow-up of exactly what's going on.
Okay, I got it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Right. Any other questions?
So we're gonna cover for the following lectures.
I'm sorry?
We're gonna cover for the following lectures about our project.
If we're gonna cover more about the project in the next lecture, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, today and Monday, it's all about project. So if you if you have something in particular that you want to discuss, techniques, and whatnot that you might have questions about for your project, please come and maybe even reach out to me privately, and we can either take a look at it together, or give me some topics that you might want to discuss in lecture. But I have a couple things that I think might be useful, like this. I think this is useful. Perhaps doing this, but for the Java side might be useful.
Okay, thank you.
For instance, one interesting thing to do here is to, instead of having the client point to a Node/Mongo implementation, point to a Java MySQL implementation, but the client doesn't change, is identical. Okay, that would be really nice, right? To understand that, hey, as long as you're talking the same API, the same web API, then the client is agnostic. All right, folks, thank you.
Professor, one thing real quick. Are there slides online about the logout process, like kill the cookie that's currently in session?
Yeah, so so here in Express, if you how do you you kill it by saying session dot how do you say it? There's a method here that you call to kill the session. Session ID, destroy.
Destroy. Okay.
Oh, wait, no. Compatible. Or maybe it is destroy. Destroy. Oh yeah, session.destroy. Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, that will invalidate the cookie, right? And anything that had been stored against that cookie, it's gone.
Okay, cool.
And that's how you implement logout. Yep.
I also texted you before class, but I think this lecture is enough for me to try stuff out. So
okay.
Cool. Thanks, Professor.
All right. Good luck. Bye bye.